It is the latest model of the glowing Jewel Beetle series who actually served as the antagonist of Medarot DS. It is MWB03 Aurora, with the kit of Hyper Missile, Double Beam, Biped Legs, and the leg ability of Auto Charge, which passively fills Meta Force every turn no matter what action is completed. Now, Aurora is a model that actually has had a 3D design for quite some time, not just from the days of Medarot DS, but has been sticking around ever since, and it's only just about now that Aurora is finally joining the fray in Medarot S as a model that can be pulled in the gacha. All the same, it is a relatively powerful shooting-based model with a very bright mat cap, pretty much the same as the one that Manjiro uses as well, but its design on the field and its overall versatility kind of leave a little bit to be desired based on the desired result. Hyper Missile on the head part is a gunpowder-based skill that, instead of being a full AoE like regular Missile, or a scattered AoE like Napalm, it instead packs passive pierce damage, which means it's a lot easier to break parts with this one when using this, especially if the user has a weakness or an advantage toward using gunpowder-based skills, such as the inclusion of Ignis a while back with the Kuro-chan rerun. Beam on both the right and left arm are optic attribute shooting attacks, which means they get a ×2 damage bonus at 30% charge and a ×3 damage bonus at 100% charge. Unfortunately, however, the one thing that sets Beam apart from Laser or even Hyper Beam is the fact that it lacks pierce damage potential, which means it is mostly good for spot nuking or guaranteeing that you can break one part in particular, but if you want to break a bunch of parts at once, Beam unfortunately may not be the best way to go about it. Despite having a very impressive base power though in the mid-1500s, almost 1600s in one case with that left arm, the lack of pierce damage does really hurt Aurora's overall viability on the field unless you could pair him off with someone that's using scope to give him that temporary use of pierce damage. Biped Legs means that Aurora will have pretty good mobility across all terrains as Biped Legs typically have the best all-around terrain compatibility, and the stats across the board aren't too shabby. I'm going to say they're kind of a mix between kind of decent where they should be and impressive on paper, but in actual result, probably not as much. In terms of armor, he's packing about 3,500 for the head, 3,150 per arm, and about 3,500 for the legs, meaning he's got a relatively healthy HP pool to his name, which can help keep him alive a little longer than what the enemy may want as long as he's on the field. His leg stats, with a mobility of 789, he's kind of on that upper tier of decent, I guess I can call it, where he's not terrible, but he will be relying moderately heavy on good terrain matching and a passive Medarot bonus, if anything, to keep his speed up and be above to keep an edge on the competition. But it is also worth noting that with an impressive heat stat across the board of minimum mid-800s to almost 950, he really isn't going to be lacking too heavily in the speed department either, so even a speed under 800 can be moderately forgiven. An evade of 1001 isn't too shabby either. He will have a good time dodging or grazing a lot of incoming attacks. A melee resist of 718 isn't terrible, but also not great either, as it does mean he will have to be really careful when fighting anyone up close and personal. And a shoot resist of 1164 is what he usually tries to make the most of with it and compensate for it with. So where he can hold his own where he can hold his own very well when exchanging pot shots with that enemy sniper from afar. That being said though, as a pure set score, I still do have to rate Aurora a pretty flat 5 out of 10. This isn't to say that he's bad or his damage potential isn't terrible, because his synergy actually is there. Beam and Auto Charge do work very, very nicely hand in hand with each other for that passive Metaforce consumption and sustain. But the problem is that Beam still lacks pierce damage, and because Hyper Missile is his only means of that, once he runs out of head uses, he's going to be kind of there mostly for spot nuking, which, unless the enemy just loves spamming Conceal, which even then there are workarounds, that's really going to be all he's good for and nothing more. The only way to really counter this is if you have someone that includes Scope on the team, as I mentioned, to continually grant him that pierce damage effect and give him Hyper Beam, but with extra steps, essentially. As mixed parts, though, I do have to rate him notably higher at about a 6.5 out of 10, given that even though his arms may not be the greatest things on planet Earth, Hyper Missile actually is a pretty solid skill to make use of pretty much anywhere, And biped legs actually aren't too shabby either, and biped legs with auto charge no less is a very nice combo. So if you could perhaps pair this off with something just a little bit stronger with some more oomph behind it, such as, say, Hyper Beam or even Laser if you have it, or something similar, then you could really start cooking with that auto charge and the damage potential you could really make use of.